Beta Consultancy is a team of experts working with passion to bring the magic of success and growth to your business. Their team has veterans and youth from various domains dedicated to growing your business. It is backed by Beta Group, a $2 billion business conglomerate, established in 1947 and diversified into different business domains. With more than 70 years of business experience and still growing.
So how was your initial journey?
It was a long time ago. I started my entrepreneurial journey almost 20 years ago. So I think just around the time when I graduated from IIT Kharagpur, we moved to the US for a master's. And around that time, I think we discussed a lot of ideas. I think that was a time when a lot of new companies are coming up and a lot of ideas are coming up. So we obviously came up with many different ideas. But finally, I think around 99, 2000, one of the things we finally decided upon was in genomics, because at that time, the Human Genome Project was just about getting completed. Yeah, so around the time when in 2000, when the Human Genome Project was getting completed, we were also planning to move back to India. I was in Chicago at that time. And so we decided that we'll look at genomics or bioinformatics as a potential area to explore, because I thought it'll be an interesting thing that will keep us engaged and not, do something that's more standard and, like running, at that point we thought that that would be something that will keep us intellectually engaged. I think at that time we didn't really know much about the subject, but we had one more founder who came from the genomics background. So that's how Subhash, me and Dr. Sujata formed the first company called Osinome Bio. And we moved back to Hyderabad. And that's in 2001, we launched the company in India. And we went, I think, in sort of an unusual path, because one, it was a completely new area at that time. Nobody knew much about genomics or even bioinformatics. So if you were looking for people to hire also, it was very difficult to do that. So if we got along, I think for us, it was helpful to know that at least there was somebody who was familiar with genomics, but at the same time, we knew that they couldn't really take off time from their full-time job. And so pretty much we were we had to build the company from scratch in many ways. So that's how we got started.
But how did you overcome the difficulty of getting people on board in the first stage, like in the initial stage?
So I think in the initial stage, one was that when we first advertised for finding people for our team, we realized that pretty much no one in India we got 2,000 responses for our ad. So clearly there were people who were looking for jobs, but they were not people who had the right skill set. Only one person actually had, bioinformatics and BLAST in it. So we said, yes, we found one person at least. But basically the way we overcome this was because Dr. Sujata and Dr. Sam were in this field. They had a lot of people who had worked with them in the past, and they had moved to India. They were doing something else. So I think we basically talked to those guys who had returned back from the US, one who returned back from Japan, and others. And that's how we got our initial team in place. So people who had returned back from other countries who had trained in this area. So we got started, but we also did one more thing at that time, which was that we knew we would need software. So we could hire at least people who had some BSc in life sciences, but had been programming for a while. So we started hiring some of those people. So we could hire for certain type of roles, but for the people who were with the domain expertise, we got people who had moved back at that time. But clearly this wasn't something that we could continue to do for a very long time. So we worked with the US university, and with the university, we created a course basically that would give certificates to these people. And that way we could build a pool of talent in this space, but at the same time, that talent could feed into us. So that's how we originally got across that first challenge. But the other thing was also that I think because it was a new area, even outside of India, it was not like it was very easy to find people.
So a lot of it was knowledge that you had to pick up. And I think given that, my background and Subhash's background are both in physics, it was easier to actually pick up bioinformatics than for biologists to pick up the informatics piece as well. So I think part of it was also learning myself. I used to also teach at that time, one course, but that's how I think was an interesting experience for us in the very early days.
Ma'am, just like you told us about the first person or how you just got started. So, what was the first funding that came your way? Like, how was you initially able to get the money to start your business, and what did you do throughout the business to get all those things?
So some of it was our own saved money. Some of it was family. So till 2005, actually, we didn't raise money. So from 2000 to 2005, we didn't raise any capital at all, except for what we could get from the family. And that also came in drips and drops. Didn't come as planned. So I think it was very different times. I think our focus was always on building revenues in some form. But initially, Ossimum India was supposed to be just a back end, and Ossimum US was the one that was going to be the front end and do that. So we had also gone through a lot of changes in terms of our business plan because there was a change in patent law. So what we originally thought we couldn't do. So there were lots of ways of, in some ways, many ways of changing what we were doing, but at the same time sticking to one of the things that we'd always thought about, which was to enable R&D. And we continued to find the right ways of building it. And I remember in 2002, 3 itself, we already had 2002 itself, we started getting, real traction with our LIMS systems. I remember the early days where we found one company in Hyderabad where the product was obviously not fully complete, but we were able to get them on as customers, and then we had to deliver within a month. So it was an interesting time. I think that happened a lot in the early days, that you had to literally stay up all night and get things as promised to customers. And I think that's how we built up. We built up a revenue. We built up, slowly we built up, and then after about 4 or 5 years, we got some interesting offers to acquire some of these companies outside of India, which were supposed to be our biggest customers, and that's how it sort of changed our strategy over the next over the next few years after that.
Like initially, you must have set some roadmaps, right? Like by this time you'll be doing this, and by this time you want to do this or to reach out to that level. So, like initially, what you thought that just worked out, or will it change, and how much it deviated over the years, and then how did you cope up with all those things, like the timeline?
I think one thing that if you're an entrepreneur, you have to remember is that nothing works according to plan, right? But even then, you have to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, then you don't know which direction to go to. So I think that's the thing that, at least luckily, I think I always was a little bit aware of that. So we never really got bothered by the fact that, you make a plan, you at least get to a certain point, and then you again revise your plan, because that's how it works in the real world. It doesn't work in spreadsheets. So, in a spreadsheet, you can make whatever you want. You make assumptions, but the real world throws googlies at you that, you're never going to be able to really actually capture it in a spreadsheet. So I think that was the thing that we are aware. But at the same time, I think it's always important to build the plan, because it helps you in, at least with whatever variables at least how much resources to put into what. But at the same time, I think one of the most important things an entrepreneur does is constantly reevaluate and see what needs to be done and what is changing. What are the business environments that have been changing? But again, like we all saw this year, was something nobody would have captured in any spreadsheet whatsoever, right? So I think that's the truth. And for an entrepreneur, I think what you're trying to do is to find opportunity in times when most other people would not have. They would have probably given up. And I think that's probably where you can truly be agile and make sure that you can pivot. So a plan is a good thing, but it's not your if you don't get it, you don't have to, you can't really curse yourself for it. I think it's part of life.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I'm very new to this field, but those are quite valuable advices that I received right now. What was your dream when you started Map My Genome? And like, how far have you reached, and how has it modified along the way?
So Map My Genome was something that for me was initially, so 2001 to 2010-11, when we were doing Ossimum, I think mostly we were working on the research side. Right, so we worked with all the large pharmaceutical companies, all the big biotechs, also a lot of the academics like MD Anderson and others that were there. So it was mostly selling to big research organizations outside of India. Now, the reason I even started Map My Genome was twofold. I think one was the fact that we also, one of the companies we had acquired was GeneLogic, which was a company that had these databases which were used by pretty much every large pharma company. But if you look at the ethnicity composition, Indians were not to be found on that, right? So if you look at most databases across the globe, that was the situation in 2010-11 timeframe also. So 90% of the world data was all Caucasian, but that's not how the world is actually divided, right? So you find that 20% is Indian, you have another 20% Chinese, and then you have Japanese, and you have African Americans, and also it was very skewed. So as we were moving along this path of personalized medicine or precision medicine, you find differences in population, and you find that different populations respond differently. But if you don't have enough data, then whatever you're going to be doing is based on data that you already have, which was only for one very large population. So I think that was one motivation to say, can we do something for the Indian population? And the second, of course, was the fact that, if you look at India and you look at our health infrastructure, you look at our health spending, it is abysmal. We find that, we have 1 point something of the GDP being spent by the government on health, which for, a billion plus people is almost nothing, right? And we are also seeing that exposed right now when it comes to large pandemic situation like where we are. So I think that was another problem, that for most people you want to make sure that you give them the power to be able to take care of themselves, right? Because in the end you find that there are more bankruptcies because of healthcare costs. There are more challenges that for most people, I think, and not talking about people who are very rich and people who have the ability to do it, but I think for majority of the people. So I think if you look at it from that point of view, I think prevention is a strategy that makes more sense for a country like us. So I think those two put together was why I started Map My Genome. And I think in the last 6-7 years, it's been really good for us to see that there has been a uptake in what we have been doing. It is something that people have started to at least move from the fact that jo hona hai wo ho jayega, to realizing that it is not just it's not just God who will take care of you, but you have to take care of yourself first, right? And I think that I think we have started to see that there is a lot of change in behavior, and I think even though the pandemic is really horrible, I think it has given people a sense of understanding on little bit on all the things that we have said so far, that it's not just about that prevention is better than cure. I think in these kind of situations, prevention is the cure.
Like generally we do not heard companies relating to, so how did the idea of the name came to you? Like how did you get inspiration? Where did you get inspiration from?
But Map My Genome was a little bit more, I thought, Ossimum was a difficult name when we started off. It was always you had to start explaining to people what it meant. But with Map My Genome, I think the advantage has been that everybody knows. And when they say Map My Genome, I'll say, yeah, sure, I'll do that, right? Because they say, when they're telling you the name of your company, you're actually asking you a question whether you'll map my genome, and which is what we are doing. So it was, I remember once I met some vice chancellor of some UK university. I think it was Cambridge or something. So I meet him for the first time. I give him my card. As soon as he says Map My Genome, he's like, I know, I've been wanting to do this for so long. And I was like, okay, good. I don't know whether he did or not, but I think the fact that the name was something that people connect with, I think is easy to sort of, allow us to be able to go in that direction. So that's how the names came about.
Ma'am, how was your experience at World Economic Forum? And what was your intake from that experience?
I think it has been a great experience because I've also been able to be part of a lot of these communities, especially on genetics and on personalized medicine and others, and to be able to actually come up with, specific actionable items that you can do for that community, right? And I think when I was vice chair of the genetics what they call as a Global Agenda Council, we were able to come up with some really good insights into what needs to be done as a global community. So I think it is obviously it has been a fantastic experience for me, not only as a community that has been very helpful, but also to be able to work with people in your field and to be able to influence a global community rather than just people around you.
It must have helped in expanding your network a lot.
Yes, it does. And I think network, is now, I think network always helps. You never know when at what point it comes back into help for you. So it's been a great experience.
Like ma'am, like most of the people when they are into when they're doing jobs and they're getting a fixed salary, they do not want to take the risk of doing a startup. So like, how did you gather all the courage? Was your always the plan of starting a startup, or it came in the latter part of your career? How did it go for you?
Well, I think before I got into IIT, I wanted to be a physicist, right? So I think that's something that I wanted to be. But I think while I was still studying, I knew that was not my, it was not something I would want to do forever. And you start to evaluate whether what you're good at and what you're, do you want to be somebody who will be a mediocre physicist, for instance? I'm sure that, I would have done okay. I'm not that, but once you evaluate and see what you'll be, not just what you're good at, but what you will be good, what you can be good at, what you enjoy, and you can still make a living out of it. I think that's the area that you need to go. It doesn't have to be a startup, right? So I think that's one thing that I tell people, that it's not an easy thing to be a startup, and it's not the most glamorous thing either, right? I think a lot of people see that as part of what happens to a startup. But if you're looking for something that can make an impact on the world, that potentially you can, do something that can, there you're able to influence something, then I think, and you're able to withstand the ups and downs, I think then it's an area that you should go into.
And what advice would you like to give to budding female entrepreneurs?
That one, don't add female to your name. So don't say I think that's part of that has become the one of the main challenges that we face, right? That there are always labels that are attached to certain things. People will not say somebody as a male entrepreneur, but they will always say, what would you say to a female entrepreneur? So I think one important thing is to move out of, that mindset from our own standpoint. And I think that will enable other people to move out of that. But the second thing is that, it's become easier compared to 20 years ago, but it is not gone away. And I think one has to be cognizant of whatever biases they might face, and the fact that every entrepreneur, regardless of what gender they belong to or which race and other things, I think does face different kinds of problems. So I think one is just to be aware of what kind of challenges that you might face, whether it's in the form of biases or others, but make sure that you find ways to overcome that. That's the important thing, right? So you can't. One thing is that if you want to make that as if you want to understand how these work, then that's a different area of different kind of research. But if you want to do something in an area that you want to live, let's say you choose a particular area, I think it's very important to understand that it's fine, there will be these kind of problems. How do I overcome that? I think then it's far easier to overcome that than saying that these are the problems I'm facing, right? So I think that's where I feel that we have an important role to play. You know, 1 or 2 generations before us did many things for us that made it easier for us. And I think we have to just recognize that our job is to make it slightly more easier for the next generation. But I think importantly to recognize that, you know, if we also start attaching labels to ourselves, we are doing ourselves and our 50% of the world disservice.
You know, you don't have anyone above you, but with you on the board. But how does that drop your efficiency, knowing that, you know, you cannot take a day off?
I think every entrepreneur needs to make sure that they take a few breaks in their, you know, whatever in, you know, whether it's taking a vacation or otherwise, so that they can be recharged. Because it's definitely a lot of many different areas that you might feel the stress from. And so it's important to take time off and make sure that, you know, it doesn't, your productivity and your stress levels don't go up beyond a certain level. So I think that's an important thing to understand. But at the same time, I certainly don't think that you are an autocratic ruler and you can do whatever you want. Clearly, I think there are more people in the political world that can do that, not us. I don't think entrepreneurs have the luxury to do that. But I think entrepreneurs have a lot of people that they have to answer to.
So if you have to just list down, say, top 5 things that for an entrepreneur or for a startup is required, like idea, capital, or patent, or team, or leadership, or right kind of people, or right kind of market. So which are the top 3 or 4 which you will list?
So I think first, most importantly, is what you can dream about, right? You know, if you have an idea, can you dream about it? And the second is, do you have the team to be able to do it? And then, you know, the third important thing I think is how lean your organization is, because I think it's an important part that we forget, because in the end, I think there are many variables that we don't account into when we are running it. So you have to make sure that is the case. And then I think the other important thing is that, you know, if there is a real, if there is not a real immediate need, how do you create that need, right? So I think that's an area that you have to constantly look at, because if you can't sell your products, then, you know, it's a very hard thing to survive if you can't do that. So I think, how many did I get to?
4.
3, 4?
4. So in all 4, the capital is not there. So that means capital is not very, very critical thing.
No, I think capital is important. It's very important, otherwise you can't get started. Yeah. But I think capital is not the thing that you live for, right? I mean, it's
correct.
It's I think the problem has been in the last 5-6 years. Everybody talks so much about capital raises and valuation. They forget that they're running it. They're running a company because they are pursuing an idea.
True.
And they're pursuing an idea because they want to make a change in
Correct.
You know, how
Correct.
things are done.
Correct. Way back when you started in 2013, so you were pioneers in it. So you have to create the market. You have to educate the people. Now, after 7-8 years, the market is matured. And now there are so many other competitors are there. So how do you, manage the competition?
Yeah, I think, you know, we've seen this twice, right? So even in Ossimum, I remember when we just started, there were at least 20 companies that came around, right? In Hyderabad itself. So every day when we would give an ad, there were 20 companies that are coming out. Now, there are lots of people who think it's a quick and easy way to make money. And I don't worry about that, right? I think there is a need for real competition in the market, because it, you know, it improves your talent pool. It improves a lot of things. So I think one is that it's a good thing to have some competition, but there are also people who do it because they feel that it looks like a very easy thing to do. So I remember, you know, in 2001-2, when we first started the bioinformatics course and all, there used to be people who would come and post their own stickers in front of our company, right? And I used to be very amused by that, because, you know, these are not people, they're just trying to, you know, bank on somebody else's, you know, things they're doing well.
Correct.
And those don't last. Unfortunately, they don't last very well. So if they're not sincere about it, I think they don't last. The second is, if there are other companies that are coming up, you know, that are real competition, I think that's good for the industry, because one, we are a large market. There's a lot of work still to be done, and it always improves things, right? So if we are the only company, I would be very worried. because it means the market is not growing.
True.
But some of them will fall out automatically. So I think the ones that will survive will be people who have either, they have the right mix of products or they have a lot of money. So either way, I think, it's not a bad thing to have some of those people in there. So for instance, I think we've had MedGenome who has raised, 120, 50 million something. So they've also spent a lot of money in educating, the rest of the community, which is a fine thing to do, right? So I don't feel that there is anything wrong in having or bad in having competition. I think it only helps us. And then in the end, for the genuine companies, I think you can distinguish yourself by how you create the right service mix for that particular market. And I think even if you look today at the market, while there are many people in the genomic space, they all addressing or they all are known for slightly different things. And that's what happens. You start to develop a distinctive recall for that brand. And I think that's how it gets to. And the way we are being able to do this is to also work with several other large brands like Apollo Clinics and us. We have launched nationwide. We are working with Fortis Hospital and their chain to also launch. So I think the idea has been really to say that, we've been able to create a trust between a lot of the medical community and us. And we've never really, like in the US, it was always viewed upon as something that was not in sync with the medical community, right? So people were a little skeptical in the beginning. Whereas what we were telling people is that this is not really, we are not saying anything against the doctors, we are only trying to help them. So I think today we've been able to now get a lot of medical doctors to sort of be part of this whole process of what we are doing. So there's one way is to spend a lot of money on marketing and build it. The other way is that you find people who need it and are in sync with what you're doing, and therefore they will help you in building that.
What is the process of, let's say, getting his test?
So they can just order directly on our website, mapmygenome.in, or they can go to Amazon or wherever they want, or go to an Apollo clinic or anywhere else, and a kit is mailed to them, and they just have to swab it and they can ship it back. So that's how it is done. So you don't need to go anywhere. In fact, outside of the country also, as long as there are countries that allow for these kind of tests to be done, we can ship it and then they send back the test. They send back the sample and we process it, and after that everything is electronic. So you don't really need a physical report or anything. Everything is sent by email. And now also you can log into your account on our website and you can see all your, you can see your data and everything else.